First up, the news coming out of the UK. Ben Stokes has withdrawn from that India-England Test series. Was that a shock for you? Did you see that coming?
Yeah, good evening, everyone. Yeah, it was a big shock to everyone. I think first and foremost, we all know Ben Stokes as being this cricketer, this human being that can pretty much cope with everything. From being on the field, he played under the utmost pressure, delivered, in my opinion, probably the greatest ever innings by an Englishman in an Ashes series. That innings in 2019, the World Cup final. So we know that he can cope with the pressure. The one thing about Ben is 100 miles an hour. Everything he does is at 100%, and that's in training, in his life, on the field. And I think he's probably caught up with. He had that finger injury. He broke his hand in the IPL, and he came back to play for Durham. Then he got thrusted into the England setup because of the COVID issue. He had to go and captain the one-day series against Pakistan. And I know his finger's not right, so I know he's been frustrated that the finger's not healed as well as he thought. And then with being in another bubble, the intensity of what this COVID issue has brought to the cricketers, he's decided he needs a breather. It did come as a shock, but I think it's also a wake-up call, BJ, that if Ben Stokes is struggling, with the kind of character that we know that he is, we have to listen. These players are going through a lot, not just England players, but a lot of sports people around the world. They're giving us great entertainment. We're sitting back home and turning the TVs on and expecting all of these sports people to produce magic all the time. And they're all pretty much in bio bubbles and not being able to get away from the pressures of performance. So Ben Stokes can't just go to the cinema. He can't go to a restaurant. He can't do normal things with his kids because, these players have been kept in quite a strict bubble for a long period of time. So, yeah, it was a shock. But I think it's a wake-up call to many of us that these sports people are going through quite tough times at the minute.
Do you think also, Vaughan, the fact that, it's been a tough 12 months for Ben Stokes? He's a superstar. He's a world-class cricketer. We know that. But the passing of his father last December, had to fly back to New Zealand to spend some time with him. That must have had a huge bearing on the call he made as well.
Yeah, I think you're right, BJ. I mean, again, we can't speak on behalf of Ben, but that grieving process that you need to go through when you lose a loved one. Has he gone through that yet? He's not been able to go and see his mother, just to give her a hug and just spend some time with her. So I think there's many things that are in this equation. That there's obviously the grieving, there's the loss of his father, there's the finger injury, there's bio bubbles, there's the 100% that he gives absolutely everything, and maybe that's just caught up with him, and he just has to have a look at himself and go, do you know what? I've just got to calm down a little bit and not be 100 miles an hour every single day of my life. Joe Root spoke yesterday. I thought he spoke brilliantly, and he just said, I just want my mate to be okay.
Yeah.
Not the cricketer, just his mate. And I think that's the message that we'll all send, that Ben Stokes, the cricketer, is incredible. We love him, but we just want him to be okay. And just a reminder that, he is a human being. That's all he is. He's a human being that can do extraordinary things on a cricket field. And, hopefully over the next few weeks he gets better. I don't think we'll see him this English summer. Fingers crossed that we see him in the T20 World Cup and obviously later down the line in the Ashes series.
Well, I think you're right. We take it for granted, basically, that our sports people just get up and we expect them to do big things out on the field. Vaughan, how real is it, do you think, that this Ashes series coming here in Australia is under jeopardy if the England players have to quarantine?
I've got to be dead honest here, BJ. They're under huge threat. And people may be thinking that the England players and team are overreacting. I'll just take you through the time frame of what's happened with the England team. They've pretty much been in a bio bubble for 18 months. So last summer, the English summer, they spent the whole summer locked away at 2 grounds. They were at Southampton in the hotel down there at the Ageas Bowl, and then they moved to Old Trafford at the Hilton there. They lived at the cricket ground. Jimmy Anderson lives 2 miles away from Old Trafford. His girls and family lived 2 miles. He wasn't allowed to see them. He had to stay at Old Trafford. They then went on tour to Sri Lanka, again back into a bio bubble, South Africa, back into a bio bubble. They had a little bit of time at home at Christmas, but not a lot. And when they were at home at Christmas, it was locked down over here, so you weren't allowed to do anything. You weren't allowed outside of your house, really. You could go to the shops, but there was nothing open. They then obviously toured India for a long period of time, had to go there early. I think 2 quarantine periods, one in Sri Lanka and then obviously one in India. Some spent a bit of time in the IPL. Again, that's always the debate, isn't it? The IPL, why did they go to the IPL but don't able to do other things in international cricket? Then they've come back here, and when they came back here, it was still locked down. And since our country has been opened up, these England players have been restricted once again. And from yesterday, for the Indian Test match series, they're back in a bubble where they go to ground, back to hotel. They're not allowed to do normal things. So unless things change, I'm sure the families will be allowed in. You know what happened with the Indian series last year, but it's not just getting the families in, BJ. If you've got a young wife or a young partner and 2 or 3 kids, are you really expecting your young kids to go and spend 2 weeks in a hotel room, not being able to go out?
That'd be a nightmare.
Not potentially not having a balcony, to have any outdoor space. Are you expecting them to do that? And I really do think at this stage, and I'll ask you 2 guys, do you want to see an Ashes series potentially where 5 or 6 of the England best players are not going to come because they'll pull out because they're a part of all the 3 formats? They'll go to the T20 World Cup, they'll go to the IPL, and someone like Josh Buttler, Jofra Archer goes, you know what? I'm not going to spend Christmas and New Year away from home. No way am I going to do that, with the fact that I know that my family are going to have to go through those 2 weeks of quarantine. So I think a lot has to change. I really do. And I don't think it just is, the families will be allowed in. I think the quarantining may have to change. And that's obviously saying to your government that you have to change the rules and the restrictions, which is a very, very difficult decision for the government to make.
Well, Brett, I think we don't realise that. I mean, in Australia, we're locking down. In the UK, they're open and they're able to do what they want, but they've got to restrict, obviously, sports people. But it could get to the stage here in Australia where if a certain state allows England players to come, not quarantine, they could hold the first test. May not be Brisbane, may change.
Well, I don't think it matters where it is, as long as we can play some cricket. And you've got to think too, the general consensus from the public was always cricketers, they're overpaid, they're whinging, they have to spend time in a bio bubble, so what? That's what they have to do. But when, as Vaughan mentioned, 18 months is a long time, and we've spent pretty much the entire, Australian winter in lockdown, homeschooling. I tell you what, a lot of people in Sydney are going, this is hard, this is tough. So when you combine that, the 18 months away from their family, it's really hard. I would say absolutely, open it up, have it in a secure place where they can bring their families out, because we want to see Test cricket. Make it safe, of course, but we want to watch some Test cricket.
So Vaughan, just to put it in a nutshell, what is going to be a threat to this Ashes series? If they can't do that and they have to quarantine, you don't think it'll happen?
No, but again, I'll ask you guys, do you want to see an Ashes series where there's half an England team? For me, Ashes cricket is, particularly in Australia, England supporters come. And I know that's not going to happen. So I think the England team have gone, that's fine. That's not an issue. But, an Ashes series for me, the supporters coming over, you get your team over there and you just give it everything. It's always hard playing in Australia. It's difficult. England don't win down under that often. 2010, 11, 86, 87. They're the times in my lifetime that we've gone down there and won. So it's a long shot that England with their best team would beat Australia. We know that. But, we don't want an Ashes series. We don't want to be calling an Ashes series in December with half an England team. Yeah. We just don't want that. So hopefully Cricket Australia, the government, the ECB, there's a long way to go between now and then. Yeah. I'm fingers crossed that things can get ironed out. We hope everyone can stay safe. We hope this COVID virus can get handled and everyone can get double vaccinated. We are over here. Hopefully you guys can get vaccinated over in Australia quickly and things will change. But at the minute, BJ, I have to say the Ashes are under a huge threat.